language specific asking for OER in this grant, but in each of those 4 areas, which I won't go through again, and in the competitive priorities around the I3 grants, there are numerous opportunities for developing open educational resources within. So, not to go into absolute detail with the I3 grants because they will be coming out any day now. But there are 3 big buckets. One is like proven interventions, and there's quite a considerable research base that's needed for those to go after the I3 grants. Some organizations have been investing heavily in really high quality evaluations over time. They're going to be very well positioned for going after those I3 grants. They have these developmental grants up to $5 million in that middle bucket. The kind of work that we're doing around online courses and online learning is probably in the first bucket, which is up to $2 million. And again, the final guidelines will be coming out any day now, but there's a lot of room for a lot of projects, and we're hoping to also see that reference to making the outputs freely available and open in this language too. So mentioned reauthorization for No Child Left Behind. There was a stakeholder forum which Stacy Childress from Harvard Business School, she's an expert in innovation, and I provided at the U.S. Department of Education that was nationally broadcast, talking about what the what kind of principles should be included in the future of the ESEA reauthorization for innovation ideas. And so this concept again of why all these states are going at things alone when there's a new process of digital content and open resources is very powerful. So, all right, let's switch gears here. So for statewide adoptions, what do we see happening right now? How many of you are in states that are having these discussions? Californians, right? Yeah, Idaho? Idaho? Oregon has been having some of these discussions. Texas totally changed their instructional materials adoption. Louisiana, we're seeing this in Maryland and Maine included open educational resources in their EETT grant programs under the federal stimulus. So we're starting to see some activity come up and track it. So our next steps, and this is where I'm going to reach out to all of you that are doing this work, what we need to develop and we need to come back and provide are these state frameworks. We need implementation guidelines, and when Gary did the opening and mentioned the NROC implementation guide, I actually hadn't seen that yet. And it's funny, when you're so close to people, sometimes you're not asking them all of the questions. So putting this out there, any kind of implementation guidelines, what you do in your states, or districts, or in your colleges. The business models, this is the part we're really stuck on right now for the project. We've made a lot of progress in terms of the outreach, the advocacy, the communication, but showing at least some business models that are working and cost effectiveness is going to be critical. And anybody that has anything, a paragraph, a few sentences, bullet points, a 6-page report on return on investment, opportunity costs, anything associated, that would be extremely helpful in the work that we're trying to do in advocacy. And so we've been involved in the I3 development and Race to the Top development, but here is my challenge to all of you too. If you're not involved with the people in your state or in districts around you in the I3, drafting the proposal or involvement or coming for the first winners or the first finalists for Race to the Top should be announced in the next week or two. And the department's gonna announce like the top 10, you know, it's like a beauty pageant here. It's like the top 10 finalists, and then they're gonna narrow it down. We kind of think there are only gonna be 3 or 4 maybe in the first. I could be wrong. They can change their mind, but so they're going to be more in the second round, but if you're not involved in the discussions on the I3 grants or getting involved now in putting and thinking through ideas for the next Race to the Top proposals, please find out who's working on that and do it. You've probably heard that the Gates Foundation gave quite a bit of money to around $250,000 to a lot of states, to a group of states they've been working with, to develop their proposals for Race to the Top, so that there's a team of people in every state, except for maybe Texas, that's not doing this, working on this. If you're not talking to those folks about what your open courses and the work that you've been doing can be as a support to Race to the Top, you're missing a chance of a lifetime opportunity. So just pick up the phone, try to figure it out. If you want to contact me and let me know what your state you're in, and I can try to tell you who's working on it. You know, we have our fingers in a lot of places around, so we can try to help you track down those people. But get involved in that conversation. You know, try to get those open provisions in there, but let them know the work that you're doing and how you can meet those 4 assurances. This is critical. And the applications, people are trying to figure this out. A lot of you are doing the work that creates the solutions for that. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that I was talking to Gary yesterday. We do pre-conference workshops at our conference, the Virtual School Symposium. We had 1,600 people at the conference last year, and a lot of people come to pre-conferences the day before it starts. Would love to do an OER workshop at a pre-conference that gets to highlight some of the technical assistance that we're putting together in the progress, as well as the advocacy that shares some of that. So we'll be working with you on putting panels together for that and highlighting. So go. We've got a few more minutes. So I wanted to walk you through. I will save you from reading through the list of the things that, although it's kind of funny, people were saying around the room on what is OER. So this picture is one that I just picked because many of you know I used to work in the state of Arizona, where the legislative, that's the House of Representatives. It's only 4 floors. Very quick elevator ride. Your elevator speech, this thing says, 1.5 minutes. You really don't quite have that long. I'm going to give you kind of the messaging points that tested, retested, and I'm going to tell you also some of the message points that really came across badly that surprised me. And this was, we talked to teachers, we talked to administrators, we talked to policymakers, legislators, staff people, people in the field, this whole range of people. And one of the things that really surprised me, the teachers are very uncomfortable with the idea that you can adapt the content all the time. Yeah, now, there were a lot of nuances in this stuff, and so that means that when you start to talk about it and you get into something where there are lots of nuances and they get easily confused, if the teachers are responsible for, let's say it's 5 years from now and they're responsible for the Common Core, right? But they're responsible for what your state says are the academic standards. And they feel like the thing they're most afraid of is a Wikipedia kind of model, where anybody can change it. Now what we're seeing play out, and this is part of the work we're going to have to do in these toolkits and the technical assistance, is that if a state goes to use, let's say, an open course in NROC, there's a process for looking through that content, for approving that content, making that content available, and it's a very difficult from anybody in the world can go in and make changes to that all the time. But I think that's one of the more important things that we learned from the messaging, is to be very careful or use different words rather than adaptable all the time. So that's a critical one.